Welcome back to the PT Graduate Podcast. My guest today, Mr. Ben Fraser. Hey, Ben.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me on.
You are very welcome. Thank you for being on and coming on. It's a great opportunity to have a bit of a chat about all things health and well-being. But as I was saying before we hit record, typically I'm talking to people in the health and fitness industry, but sometimes people sort of are on my radar and I'm like, oh, I need to talk to that person, or I need to talk to that person regardless. And you were definitely on that list, Ben, because we've met each other a couple of times and had some good conversations, but never enough to really dig deep. And I suppose today would be a great opportunity to find a little bit more about your health journey, but also what you do, so the listeners know where you're coming from. So maybe just a bit of an intro in terms of what you do, and then I'll start picking your brains about the other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, as you said, my name is Ben Fraser. I am a partner, a father, a son. For work, I am an insurance advisor, representing, giving advice to families on personal insurance on behalf of AIA Thrive, which is obviously linked to AIA and
Yes, nice t-shirt.
AIA Vitality, which I know you're a big fan of. In regards to my health journey, I guess we can dig a bit deeper if you want to, but if we go back 3 and a bit years, on my 35th birthday, it was the night before my 35th birthday, actually, right. which is in August. I had given up drinking 6 months earlier, which was life-changing for me. I was a big partier. I had worked in the liquor trade actually for a number of years.
Yes.
And I just reached a point where I thought, alcohol really wasn't serving me anymore. And I decided to go a few weeks and then a month, and then the benefits from not drinking and my sleep and all of that. I just thought, this is amazing. So on my 35th birthday, my life had already started to improve because I'd made a big change. Alcohol wasn't serving me, so I had got rid of it. One thing that had happened is my weight had always fluctuated throughout my whole life. I'd always been overweight. Probably, if we look at BMI terms, I'd probably almost always been obese, but it would fluctuate, up and down. But in that first 6 months of giving up alcohol, I had started consuming a lot of sugar. So things like ice cream and different things like that. My weight had actually ballooned to 140 kilos.
Wow.
So I sort of looked at myself in the mirror on my 35th birthday and I thought, life is getting good. I've got a partner, I'm starting to build a career, but one thing's missing. I've got this burning desire to be active, and I'd always turned to fitness at different points in my life. I'd actually run a half marathon a few years earlier. Generally something would happen. I'd go, oh, Ben, you got to sort this out. So I'd spend 3 months. One of the things I love saying now is consistency beats intensity. But what I was doing back then is I'd get really intense for 3 months. And I'd train and I'd run that half marathon, which I did once, or I'd join a gym and I'd go every day for 3 months. And it was really intense, but there was no consistency. I'd drop off and I'd slip back into my old ways.
Right.
So 35th birthday, I thought I got to do something. I found some motivation. I read a few books. I read Rich Roll's Finding Ultra. I even read David Goggins' book. And, that was really good for getting me off the couch. And I started... I was living in Browns Bay at the time, North Cross, and there was a 3K block around my house, and I started walking to a lamppost, running to a lamppost.
Brilliant.
And I did that almost every day, every second day, until I came home crying one day to my partner, crying with happiness because I was able to run that full block. I then set myself a goal. Which at the time was the 11K run, part of the Auckland Marathon. So 11K traverse, I think they call it, or something like that.
Over the bridge.
And I did that, and I quickly learned. Cut me off at any point. I quickly learned that the weight did start to fall off me, but then it started to creep back on. and I quickly learned that I wasn't going to be able to outrun a bad diet. So if weight loss was my goal, I needed to look at things like nutrition, sleep, and strength training. They were going to be the big levers for my nutrition. However, by this point, running had given me something. It had given me community. It had taught me delayed gratification and consistency. So I was going to run. I knew by this point I was always going to be a runner. It took me a long time to call myself a runner because that was still 110 kilos or 100 kilos. I didn't look like a runner, but I ran. So running was there and it was always going to stay there. But if I wanted to look at my weight and running's great for keeping weight off, but I wasn't going to be able to out-train a bad diet.
Sure.
So I had to look at other things for my weight loss. And then over the last 3 years, it's been about consistency. Early on, I got myself a coach. So once I could run 5Ks, I thought it was important to take the thinking out of it, to get someone that I could express my goals with, and they could write a plan for me and get to know me, and things like how important recovery are, and realistic goals and pacing, and then working in speed work and intervals and long runs. So getting a coach, I've been with the same coach now for 3 years.
Brilliant.
And it's taken me from my first marathon at Taupo, which I probably ran a bit early in my running career. It was a big goal. It was an audacious goal to run a marathon after not being able to run a K, in August, to then go out less than a year later and try to run 42 Ks. I got it done. It took me 6 hours and 16 minutes. So
well done. Well done.
there's a lot of walking involved. I went back to that same marathon last year, 2 years later, and I ran it in 3 hours 43.
Bloody hell.
And I'm going back to that same marathon this year, Taupo. And I've got a bit of an audacious goal of running a 3:16, which will be a 3-hour improvement over 3 years. I don't think I'm quite there. I'll settle for a sub 3:30 or a PB. So, and I'll run ultras, I'll run 100K, but most of all, I found a community. The people that I associate with now, the people who get up at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning to go run in the forest, are the type of people that I want to hang out with, that I want in my life. So, so you asked me a question and I just started talking.
Yeah.
I hope that was interesting.
No, that's a fantastic, Ben. And you've probably answered about at least 4 of the questions I was going to ask anyway, because you're so thorough. But it's quite an inspiring, it's a very inspiring story. And I've been watching from afar on Strava, seeing your times come down, seeing your consistency that you talked about. And you're absolutely right. Consistency beats intensity every day of the week. But you were very open earlier about the fact that that wasn't always the way. You'd sort of rush in, hit it for 3 months and then stop. But what was it that changed? Was it the age or something else? Or was it internal or external that made that difference? Or was running the thing that you'd been looking for?
I think it was, I reached a point, I think earlier in my life, throughout my teenage years and my early 30s, when I turned to health and fitness, whether it would be running or going to the gym regularly or something like that, I think I was running away from something.
Okay.
Running and exercise is therapeutic, but it's not therapy.
Sure.
They're very different things. Running is meditative, it's therapeutic, it releases endorphins, and all of that sort of stuff, but it's not going to solve all of your problems. And I think what happened is during those earlier periods where I knew that there was something there within health and fitness. I just knew it, and that's whenever life got tough, whenever I went through a breakup or a stressful time at work, or I would go on a health and fitness journey and go right in, and that very much all or nothing sort of personality. And I'd do it for 3 months, and it would improve my life. And then it would improve my life. And I thought, wow, my life's better now. And that thing I'm doing is really hard. So why don't I stop doing that hard thing? And my life will just continue to improve, because it has. But it wouldn't, it would slip back. I think what changed this time is everything else that I'd changed in my life, meant that my health and fitness journey, I wasn't running away from something like my problems. I was running towards something. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. There's the guy who's written a lot about sort of the modern stoicism, daily stoic, Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan Holiday.
Yeah.
He wrote a book called The Obstacle is the Way, in one of his
Yeah.
many books. And to me, that's what that sounds like. Instead of running
Yeah.
away from the problem, it will always be there while you're running away from it. But if you run towards it or even through it,
Yeah.
that can be the solution to the problem. I know that's simplifying it very much, but that's kind of what it sounds like to me. It's sort of it hadn't worked, and then it did,
Yeah.
because you sort of took it head on.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's the best way I can explain it. It is just consistency. I did get some results early on that kept me in the game. And then I think you reach a point. The cool thing about running or exercise in general is your goal doesn't always have to be, I'm going to run a certain pace.
Mm.
It can be, I want to go, my goal this week is I want to go and join a new run club and meet some new people. Or my goal is I want to run for a time period, or hey, I want to, there's lots of different things you can do within that. And I was, especially early on, I was coming off a low base. It was quite easy to have all these little sort of micro goals on my way to achieving bigger goals, like Tarawih 100K or along the side of that, my weight loss journey or strength or nutrition and I think after a while it just becomes a way of life. When you really jump into it. So I don't know what it was about the 3 months, because it was the half a dozen times previously when I'd been on a health and fitness journey, it was always around 3 months. And I think it's because at around that point, you do start to see some of the improvement and you think, oh, well, I'm happy now. I've done this, I've improved, so I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah. It's like brushing your teeth though, right? Or having a shower. You don't just do it once.
Yeah. Exactly.
You have to keep doing
it. Yeah.
I like it. Tell us a little bit about Tarawih. I recently had a chat to an ultra runner, Polly Taylor, who is in her 60s, and she's sponsored by La Sportiva because she's just a phenomenal long distance runner who you may have come across. I don't know.
I have heard. I haven't met Polly. I've seen her. I've been at events with her. I haven't introduced myself to her, but I've heard her on a podcast before as well. I believe she is a tour guide in the South Island as well.
That's right. Spot on. Spot on.
And she's did she have a car accident or some setback? She was training for UTMB. She just did the 10 miler. Yeah.
Spot on. That's her. Fascinating chat. I mean, feel free to go back and have a listen to the episode.
I will.
It's not out yet. It'll be out in a few weeks, but that sort of got me thinking about the runners and different people who are doing it, and obviously talking to you as well. But I'm keen to hear about sort of your experiences of Tarawih. I mean, she was talking about it similarly, and the thing that stood out for me was she talked about the top 2 inches, and she came into aid stations, and there was a guy sort of struggling and down on himself, and almost ready to chuck it in, and she was breasting and ready to shoot back out, and she wasn't necessarily feeling any better than he was, but she was determined that she was off and away, sort of thing, and she just gave him a little bit of an elbow nudge, metaphorically, and like, come on, let's go, get on with it. How was it for you, and was that your first ultra, or had you done previous ultras?
I had been signed up for the 50K Tarawih the year before, which was cancelled. And then I had run on that day. We were actually, even though the event was cancelled, the current we were allowed to run in groups. So I still actually went to Rotorua. I was allowed to travel there. Everything was within the rules, and a group of us actually ran 50Ks, not on the Tarawih course, but around the redwoods and a similar part. So I did run 50K that day. And then I'd run a 50K at Taupo, ultra marathon. So I'd run a couple of 50s at event, one at an event, a few in training. The beautiful thing about trail running is, well, there's so many beautiful things, and there's a lot of science behind it as well. And I'm not a scientist, but there's stuff to do with being out in nature, and even the way your something to do with how your eyes are looking at certain things. There's a lot of science, emerging science to do with the benefits of trail running. But I'd only been introduced to trail running not that long earlier. And to get back to your actual question around Tarawera, for me, it was a big audacious goal around doing 100K. At that point, I'd been running for less than 2 years. I couldn't run a K. I couldn't run to the letterbox 2 years earlier, and then here I was about to run 100K. So the event itself was just incredible. By this stage, I'd built up quite a good community around me, so I knew a lot of people there. And it's one of the emotional, I'd said to myself, getting to the start line is the achievement. This is the reward for everything I've put in. But I really was still trying to prove to myself and prove to the world that I could do hard things. And my thinking's changed since then, and we can talk about that a little bit with my goals moving forward. But on the actual event, it was just a tough, long day. It was beautiful. I think, the first probably 50Ks, I ran most of it, even probably right up to 60Ks. And then it was, the body starts to hurt, and it really does turn into a bit of a hike. The biggest mental challenge for me was I took a wrong turn. I bumped into someone I knew at about the 85K mark. So by this stage, you're only 15Ks away. Even at a walk, I'm 2 hours away. I'm right there. I took a wrong turn, which added about 7Ks. It was completely my fault. The course marking, everything was brilliant. I just started chatting, and both of us missed a turn off. And then we got to red tape, where we're looped back onto the course, and the rule is never cross the red and white tape. And, at that point, we were 15 to 16 hours in, and I thought, well, we know there's people there. We know that's the course. Let's just do it. And we shouldn't have done it. So we looped back around. So my 100K ended up being closer to 108, 109Ks, which when you're 85Ks deep is just heartbreaking. But I knew I was going to do it, and nothing was going to stop me doing it. So it was a very long day out for me. I came into the finishing line down at the reserve there in Rotorua at about 4 a.m. The last 5Ks are flat. After you leave Blue Lake, and you sort of come down into the redwoods, and then you've got flat. The last 7Ks are flat through the sulfur flats, and to hear the two MCs, Matt and Eugene, I knew who they were. Mum and Anna were there, and running in those last 100 meters, and I just started bawling. I just started. There's a pretty incredible video of me crossing the line. I'm just in tears. This was a real line in the sand that I had made some massive changes in my life, and that I could do this. I could do hard things. But you're right, it's a mental game. If you can run a half marathon, if you can run a marathon, you can complete 100K or even a miler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That's amazing. So fast forward to not just recently, but last weekend, I think it was Rotorua Marathon.
Yes.
You obviously completed, but at the same time, you were a pacer.
Yes,
No
which
less.
was probably the most fun I've ever had at an event.
Okay.
So to set context, 2 weeks earlier, I completed the Fault Line 50K in Wellington, which was one of my sort of big two A races or A goals for this year. So 2 weeks prior to Rotorua, I done Fault Line 50K.
Yeah.
Beautiful in Wellington. Really happy with how the race went.
Mm.
And then Rotorua, I had the opportunity to be a pacer, 4 hour 15 minute pacing group. And I hadn't, and technically it was actually only my third road marathon event. I've run marathon and training lots, and I've done lots of ultras and other events, but it was actually only my third event. But I knew that the pace would be comfortable for me because it's 5:55 minute, 5:55 pace.
Okay.
So I knew, that'd be very comfortable pace for me. Sort of woke up 2 days before, which is only 10 days after I've run an ultra, and I thought, oh yeah, the pace is going to be fine, but it's still a marathon, Ben. You still have to respect the marathon. So I had a little bit of nerves because I thought, oh, it's still a marathon. It's still 42 clicks. And I hadn't run the course either. I know notoriously it is probably the hilliest road marathon in the country.
Right.
From what people tell me. So, but I knew I was with a good group. I knew I didn't have to worry too much about the actual pacing. There were 4 of us pacing. So I knew that as long as I just stuck with them, I'd spoken to them and they said, we're running 5:55. Don't even worry about it. Just stick in between us and hype people up.
Nice.
And that's what we were able to do. So we had sort of 2 paces, Dean and Louise at the front, and Murray and myself were the tail end. And it's just an incredible experience. It was still hard. A marathon is hard, even if you're running well within your race pace. It's a long way. But it was just so neat, especially, we had a good group with us up to about the half marathon mark, and just sort of encouraging people on, and then some of them dropped off, some of them stuck with us, and then we'd pick up people along the way who had started off at the 4-hour pace group and sort of dropped back. And then with about 5Ks to go, right up to 2Ks to go, anyone who's looking fresh, you sort of say, we can't have you finishing this fresh. It's time to kick on. And they sort of kick on and finish ahead of you. So a lot of the people with you, you'll try to get to finish ahead of you.
Right.
We came through the chute as 4-hour 50-minute paces at 4 hours, 14 minutes and 50 seconds. And those last few hundred meters where I'm sort of running backwards and waving people on and saying, you could do it. And then Murray had a gentleman called Pat, who was his first marathon. He'd been running alongside Murray the whole way. And I'd been a few hundred meters ahead for a while, getting other people through. They joined in and we ran the last sort of 100 meters together. And it was just an incredible feeling.
Brilliant.
Yeah, unbelievable. I'm going to do that every year.
Really? Oh, superb.
So, yeah.
How did you pull up from the fault line? How was the body feeling with only a 2-week gap?
That's probably the biggest thing I've noticed in my fitness with the consistency and the inclusion of strength work, not just running, is yes, my times have improved and my heart rate has lowered, my resting heart rate is lowered, but the biggest improvement has been my physical and my mental recovery. That's really noticeable. The first time a few years ago when I'd do a big effort, whether it's a big, a long run, a hill run, whatever, the recovery, my first 50K, my first 100K, we're talking weeks, if not months, of mental and physical recovery,
Okay.
Now, fault line, a day or 2 days later, I just feel
really
normal.
Wow.
So I don't fool myself into then heading straight back out into intense, track work or hills or I still allow the recovery because I know my body is still recovering. But no, that's the biggest thing I've noticed with my fitness is actually the shorter recovery times.
Yeah, nice work. And so you talked about strength work. What sort of strength regime have you got going on in the background as well?
Yeah, so I was seeing a physio. So for that first marathon I did, Taupo, I got a training load injury, which was my lateral knee pain on my ITB, which was caused by my glute and glute medius not activating.
Hanging on.
So I, for about 2.5 years now, I've been doing sort of a lot of glute strengthening exercises. So banded crab walks, banded clamshells, and then, other weight exercises to help with my glutes. So
Mm.
I often will do sort of, and it takes me 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes. I'll do sort of a specific runner's strength, or sort of that I can do at home with a couple of dumbbells and some bands.
Mm.
And I try to do that probably 3 times a week, either at home or at the gym.
Mm.
And then I usually try to do 2 to 3 other sort of gym sessions as well, just because I enjoy it. Not running specific, but I usually try to do like a big legs day at the gym, where I'm actually doing, presses and all of that sort of stuff, and Bulgarian split squats, and rather than those sort of activating band work, actual lift some weight around. I try to do like a push day, a pull day, and a legs day.
Nice. Yeah, good. It's obviously serving you well.
I think so. Well, yeah. I mean, especially when it comes to weight loss, I think building strength, as I said, you can't outrun a bad diet. It's all calories in, calories out. And yes, running may give you an extra 500 calories or whatever that you can consume for that day, but it also makes you really hungry. So you can quite easily eat an extra 700, and then you're in a calorie surplus.
Definitely.
So,
yeah. Very easily done. Your body's very clever at compensating for whatever you give it.
Yeah.
So just one final question about the pacing. So to become a pacer, is it who you know, or do you have to have done a certain number of events, or what's the qualification to be a pacer?
Yeah, so a few things to say around pacer. It's basically anyone who feels they have enough experience, and then generally you'd be pacing at a time that you're comfortable to run. Pacers are just humans, that have got a bit of running behind them, and are confident that they can run at a certain pace for a certain time. But there's a lot more to it than that as well. I might just quickly add to your question, anyone who's going to use a pacer at an event, let's say you're training for a 10K or a half marathon or a marathon, and you want to go out with the, if it's a half marathon, you want to go out with the 2-hour pacing group and try to run under 2 hours. Always go up, find the pacers. They'll have usually a balloon or a bib on that says their pacing time. Go up, introduce yourself, and say, how are you planning on pacing this run? Because there's no hard and fast rules. There's a few things that can change. They could go off gun time, or they could go off mat time. So gun time is when the gun starts, but if you're further back, you might not cross that start line for 4 or 5 minutes. And then they're going to have to their pace is going to be faster than what you've trained for, because they're not running a 2-hour marathon. They're running a 1-hour 56 marathon, because they're going gun time. They also may want to bank time at the start, and run slightly and allow for people to fade. Only 5% of people run negative split a race, which means they're 5%. Running.
Interesting.
Apparently. Don't come up with that. That's what I've heard. So most people, yes, you want to say you want to, run faster in the second half than you do in the first, but it only happens 5% of the
tough
time.
to do.
Most people fade. So if you are going to introduce yourself and ask the pacer, hey, how are you planning on doing this? Are you going to run even splits? Are we going to run slightly faster at the start and allow for time at the end? Or are you going to try to negative split? Then you don't get a shock when they start, and you've trained to run 5-minute 30s, and they're running 5:15s, and you panic.
Throw you off.
I got sidetracked there, and I think I forgot your original question.
It was just about the qualification to do it. Like,
so
someone you know.
I mean, it is. There's different. They're all volunteers. These things are all run by volunteers. So I've just from joining different run clubs and becoming part of the community. I just got asked earlier in the year, hey, I think I like doing a lot of service through my running, like the Speed Freaks, which is a charity I volunteer for. And they said, hey, I think you'd be a really good pacer. Do you want to you know, are you interested? I'll introduce you to the person organising the paces for
Right.
road marathon. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. And
Mm,
just sort of came from there. So
sure.
I
Okay.
certainly wouldn't have put my hand up and said, oh, I'll pace the 3 hour 30 because I don't even know if I can run a 3 hour 30 yet. So,
Sure. Sure.
yeah, it's just about being comfortable. And even pacers will have a bad day, you know, like where they just, even if it is comfortable, they get an injury or they,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, you know.
Yeah. 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 Good experience though, because then the race doesn't become about you. You know, you have to be quite unselfish.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's a really good thing. When I've had times in my running where I luckily, apart from that training load injury, which was sort of ongoing in the first year or so, I haven't had big injuries. But even if you're not injured, even if you're just going through a bit of a lull or you're in between training blocks, volunteering at events has been massive for me. So going and being a marshal, or course marking, I've done it for, you know, lots of different events over the last 3 years. And it's a good way to be part of the community as well when you're not out there to reach your own goal. It's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, I love it. It sort of takes me straight back to the question I asked you about what was different, you know, between the 3 month fall off the cliff thing as opposed to sticking with it, that consistency piece. And I think a big part of it is identity. So every time you do something that keeps you in the game, it's a vote for the person that you want to be. And the more votes that you accumulate, the more likely it is to stick. And so it is an identity change. You know, you talked about I didn't see myself as a runner until I'd done, you know, this, and this. But if you're running, you're a runner, whether
Exactly.
it's 10 meters or 10,000 meters. And I think that's a big part. And being part of the community, doing the volunteer work and helping out, even if you're not even racing or running, just goes to prove again, there's another vote that these are your people. And you found your tribe. And how amazing is that?
Yeah. I'll just add to that, volunteering, so marshalling at a local event is a great way to get your mojo back. Say if you're post big event and you especially early on, you may have post run blues after you've sort of worked really hard to do your first Ironman or run your first marathon. And afterwards, you sort of, most people often get sort of blue feeling, you know. Volunteering, saying, hey, well, I don't really want to run something just yet, but I'll go and help out. That is a fantastic way I've found to go to get out there and go cheer people on and help out, be of service, and then go, I want to do this. I want to do this. And then break that next goal.
Yeah. Fantastic. You hinted earlier about talking about goals and the future, and I think you talked about, you know, the timing not necessarily being very important. You know, it's about doing the thing. And so what does the future look like in terms of events, goals, distances, all that stuff?
Yeah, so one trap you can fall into, especially when you sort of get into the community and you hang out with a lot of people who are doing these amazing things, and it just sort of can become the norm. You think it's the norm, and it's not. You know, 0.1% of people can run a marathon or something like that. It's not the norm. We all should be runners. We're all born to be runners. But so it's quite easy to get tricked into further, more, especially once you get that into that ultra space. Oh, 50K, that's just a warm-up. 100K, 100 miler. There's 200 milers now. And I started to go down that track of, you know, I want to do my first 100-mile race. And Fault Line this year, where I did the 50, I'd actually originally signed up to the 100K. And I've got a 9-month-old baby. I'm a partner. I'm self-employed. I ran the Tarawera 50 earlier in the year, and I enjoyed it so much. I looked at my training plan for the 3 months or 4 months leading up to Tarawera, and there were 8-hour runs on a Sunday, and all this sort of commitment. And I just thought, you know what? I don't want it that much right now. I've got running is a hobby. You know, it's important that I'm not just chasing the further, longer, faster, bigger. It's something that I do to enhance my life. It's not my life. Something I did as part of my life to make me a better father and a better partner and a better friend and fitter, healthier and live longer. more joyful and energetic. So I decided to drop to the 50, and through that process of training for the 50 at fault line, and then having a really good run for me, because it's me versus me, it just cemented my idea that over the next few years, what I'd really love to do is focus on the shorter, and it's not shorter, but focus on sort of 10Ks, half marathons, and 50s, where the training, I can fit that into my life. There's two parts to this. It's actually a really good time for me to do this because I'm 38 and I'm still coming off a low base. My speed, the fastest I'm going to be, is going to peak in the next few years, maybe sort of mid 40s.
Yeah.
My endurance is going to last another 30 years.
Yeah.
So right now, I want to focus on getting faster over that shorter distance. I've got some goals around, I'd love to run a sub 3-hour marathon one day and go. My first marathon took me 6 hours and 16 minutes, and now I'm running a 2:50 something. I'd love to run I'd love to run a sub 90 half. I'm about 4.5 minutes away.
You're not far off, I saw.
So, and even 5 and 10Ks, and then the 50K trail, I'd love to run for what I consider fast, and that's still middle of the pack. And that's fine. It's me versus me. But so I want to spend the next few years. Yes, I do have a desire to run a 100-mile race. Especially Tarawera. You get a po number when you finish, and I admire all my friends. I'd love to pace some of my friends over the next few years in their miler attempts. But for me, I'm not looking to increase that distance over the next few years. I want to focus on the shorter stuff, which isn't short. But, half marathons, and 50s, while I've got that speed work, while I can get faster, while I don't have 8 hours on a Sunday to go out to the forest. And later on in life, once things settle down, I can look at milers or backyard ultras where you can go for 3 or 4 days. So that's my goal.
Fantastic.
So big goal is Taupo Marathon. Just starting my 3-month training block now.
Okay. All right. I hope it goes well. Good luck.
Thank you.
It's been awesome talking, Ben. I could probably just leave record running and we could just keep chewing the fat, but I know we've all got stuff to do. So at some point I have to stop recording, but hey, look, I just want to thank you for your time and your openness and for sharing so much of your journey. And it's quite inspiring just sitting here listening to the stuff that you've been through. And I hope that's the same for our audience. And I think not only for themselves, but for their clients. And, there's gems in there all the way through. If someone wants to reach out and say, hey, Ben, I heard you on that podcast. Can you just tell me X, Y, Z? How could they find you? What's the best way to find you?
Probably through Instagram. Benny.b.fraser, I think is my handle.
Sure.
You might be able to share that in the notes.
Okay. I can do that. No problem.
Ben Fraser is my name, but it's at Benny_B_Fraser is my Instagram.
Okay.
Otherwise, they can email me at my personal email, which is ben.b.fraser@hotmail. And if anyone wants to find out any more about vitality or AIA, they can reach out to me that way as well. ben.fraser@aiathrive.co.nz.
AIA Thrive.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yes, great program. Not going to go into it now, but excellent program, well worth looking at if you want to discount off your insurance and you're already an active person, or even if you're not already an active person, still a great program. Cool. Thank you, Ben.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.